All right, welcome everyone. It is 1:30 where I live. And
Wow.
I believe it's afternoon where most of you are. I think there might be a Hawaii number, so good morning if you're in Hawaii and good afternoon if you're somewhere else across the country. Welcome, I am Brooke Wilson. I am an April board member and the facilitator of today's call. Thanks for joining us for this workshop. Very timely, an overview of supports and tools for facilitating an effective webinar. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, if you scroll over the screen, a menu bar pops up. Depending on what device you are on, you can either find the menu bar at the top or the bottom of your screen. There you will find the closed captioning for today's session. Stream text is also available. You can find the link to that. We usually put it in the chat, but we don't have that. So you can find the link for that through the agenda webpage on the conference website under this session. So instructions for connecting to this session. Sign language interpreting should be visible on your screen. If it is not, please let us know. We don't have the chat feature on this session. I apologize for that in advance. So what we are going to do is allow for chat in the Q&A box. So we try to reserve Q&A for questions, but we're kind of rolling with the punches of technology today. So if you do put chat into the Q&A, I will try to keep on top of that and dismiss it so that the questions don't get missed by our presenter. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment and you are participating using keystrokes or through your phone, you can press *9 on your keypad to raise your hand, and we will let you know when to unmute. I believe that you will find that in the More options of the menu bar, because currently that's not showing on my screen as well. So if you need to raise your hand, *9, or if you click on More, I hope that you can find that option. If you do unmute and join the conversation, please keep all your background noise down as much as possible so that we can hear you. And with that, I will turn it over to Barbara Schoen, who is an associate professor at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. So basically what I'm going to present on is how to create a webinar, how to host a webinar using Zoom. And I selected Zoom because I really found that I'm using it as a professor teaching, and I've found that the possibilities are endless. It's very useful for webinars, meetings, and fun. Also, as a sister, cousin, relative, friend, we're using webinars to stay in touch. Most of my family's in Michigan, and they haven't been able to come and visit. So every other Sunday, we get together with our cousins and we just do a 40-minute webinar for fun. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit. The focus of this presentation is going to be on hosting a webinar, but I have included slides for meeting functionality and also just the basics on how you join on your phone and all of that. We're not going to be able to get to all of that, but I'm going to do my best. I've created the information there for you to use. Most of you are probably not novices. You're here, so you at least know how to join a meeting. But some of you may not know all of the functions, so I've included them. Great. Okay, so I'm going to start with the basics today. I'm going to talk about just webinar planning 101, what to do whether or not you're doing it virtually or whether you're doing it once we go back to face-to-face. So I'll talk about what the difference is between webinars and meetings, how to plan a webinar, Zoom participation, including membership options, because again, if you're just an everyday user, you're not going to understand that. Then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty on hosting a webinar. I will try and save some time for a Q&A and diving deeper, but then again, we're going to go back to the basics, or I'm going to provide you information on going back to the basics, joining a webinar, meeting on multiple platforms, your phones, and then participating in a webinar and meeting. And I'm trying to be respectful of Pam Wilson, who's our interpreter. So you may find me pausing between slides just to make sure that she's finished. Okay, so why me? There is so much information out there on Zoom, and I can tell you that Zoom does an excellent job in providing you basically all the tools that you'll need. You'll see in the left-hand corner, I have a Teaching with Zoom book, a guide for complete beginners. But the reason I did this is because the information can be overwhelming. As you can see from the Zoom Help Center, there's a lot of information. And within each of these links that you click, there's probably 5 to 10 more links you can click. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to start off with just some really general recommendations for event planning, things to think about. Now, these are just universal, kind of random information, but really, really important, like kind of crucial. If you are presenting based on a grant, you want to make sure that you introduce your funding source. All right, if you have one. For this presentation, there is none. And then also you want to make sure you have broadband, good computer, camera, obviously, and a built-in microphone or ancillary microphone. I don't know if you've watched television these days, you're watching the news and you see somebody come in to talk about a topic and their microphone isn't working real well. So it happens. So you really want to make sure that either your built-in or your ancillary microphone is working well, and also have a backup plan. I actually have 2 PCs and my phone. I actually have my phone ready to join the meeting in case there is a problem. So you do want to have a backup plan. All right. Now I'm putting this early for myself and just to explain that Pam is here with us as an interpreter. So it's important when you're hosting an event that you let the team know that's presenting how to work with an interpreter and make the presentation style work better. So do as I say, not as I do. Slow the pace down. Pam is probably already exhausted. Again, make sure to give a moment, as I've talked about, watch your interpreter and make sure she's finished signing before you move to the next slide. If you're highlighting points on the slide, again, give some time for your interpreter to describe them. Keep language simple. And discuss how to use features that are available to the presenters. This is a little random here. But again, as this is actually something that Brooke did early on and allowed the interpreter to share, and this was just how to use the toolbar, okay? All right, so what you want to do is, when you're beginning a webinar, is assemble a really effective coordination team. You shouldn't try and do all of this by yourself. It's really important to have a group behind you. And this again, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but this again can be a co-host, somebody who has experience with information technology, basically, you know, folks who can back you up. You want to make sure that your theme aligns with the expectations of the audience, and that it is information that is relevant, and that you look at webinar planning checklists. I will say it often, Google is your best friend. You type in webinar planning checklist and you're gonna find, sometimes you can click on image and you're gonna find tons of information about what you need to do in planning. And we'll go through this. I have a little picture. We'll go through to talk about each of these in a little more detail. Also remember to share any organizational documents that you might have. If you are presenting research and you're going to want people to answer questions, you may have to have them sign a consent form or consent to record, etc. You're also going to want to plan early and devise a calendar of any of your activities. This is really important. One of the things is say I'm planning an event 1 to 2 months from now. It may be because of Disability Awareness Month. Well, there's going to be a lot of other people who are out there planning events. So hop on the internet and look and see what other things are scheduled. All right, pay attention to that. So plan early and try and figure out if there's any other conflicts. Contact your colleagues and say, hey, you know, what are you planning and what days are you planning on it? All right. So of course you want to choose a user-friendly platform. I use Zoom. Zoom is amazingly easy and intuitive to use, but there's a lot of information and a lot of options. So, you know, again, it's really important that you understand how to use the platform and then that your presenters do too. So again, you want to select someone who's an expert to present on your theme, and you also want to have a backup. Sometimes that may be someone else who works with the person that you've chose to host your webinar, or be a content expert for your webinar. You're definitely going to work with them on giving them orientation to the platform, like April did with me. We met a few days beforehand and just made sure that I was comfortable with everything. Do a run-through. Zoom does allow for webinar run-throughs, assess what's working and not, and then look at doing a survey, either a post survey, which Zoom allows, or use the polling function, which I'm planning on doing at the end of this, right near the end of this presentation. And if you'll note below, I have provided a reference. This is the source, the source for some of this information that I presented. Okay. All right. So here's a little picture. So as I said, schedule a date and time. You may find that as you're investigating, that time's not appropriate, or that you've found the perfect presenter, but they're not available at that time. So it's, again, planning ahead and looking at making sure all of the pieces fit are really important. So you select your theme, you initiate contact, you follow up, you make sure that you get an abstract so that you make sure that what you think that they're going to present and what you want them to present are in line, and get any consent from them. You're going to test, as I said, the webinar platform, and then you're going to start to advertise. Again, check with other colleagues a couple of months in advance. You're going to want to start marketing your event 1 month to 2 weeks before it starts. They reference this MailChimp. I wasn't aware of it. Obviously, it's a resource that they will provide services at a cost, but they have a lot of really good resources, okay? So again, there's a lot of good information out there on the website. And then once you've done that, you can conduct your webinar. All right, so as I said, I'm providing the Zoom basics specifically for a webinar. All the functionality that you have in a meeting, you're not going to see here, as you're probably already aware of. So let's talk. I need to get a little drink here. Okay, so meetings versus webinars. Again, meetings, they offer similar functions, but they have key differences. So you need to think about this. Is it a webinar that you really want to plan, or do you think it's a webinar, but do you want to use a meeting structure instead? Because webinars are generally, someone talking at you and not interactive conversations. So again, meetings are designed to be collaborative events, whereas webinars are designed so that the host and any panelist can share their video, audio, and screen. Generally, you are limited to Q&As like you are today. And also in webinars, you cannot rename yourself. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the functions. But just in case I don't get time, I want to make sure you know. As you can see, Pam and our names are there. You may be joining something and you may not feel comfortable with your name being there. Know that you can get into your settings and rename yourself for either that meeting or all meetings. And so you may just want to give them your first name, or you may just want to give them a pseudonym. All right, so this is a real important distinction too. Meetings, they're ideal for hosting. We talked about this, small groups where you're talking about things. And what's really important here is that there are free and paid subscription options. So you can have a meeting without having a subscription to Zoom. For webinars, again, they're for large events, town halls, educational lectures like this one, but you need to have a pro subscription and a paid add-on. And I'm going to go to that right now. Okay, so where do you find that out? You go to Zoom US, as easy as that. If you look at the title bar, I have the orange circle there, and that's the website. And then you look and you see where the blue arrow is, plans and pricing. Click on that. So as I said, this is required for hosting webinars. Now, when you look at pricing, it's free. You can host up to 100 participants, but you are limited to 40-minute meetings. You can have unlimited one-on-ones, but you can only meet for 40 minutes if you have a basic membership. What they say is true. It's free forever. You do not have to submit a credit card. All right. Now, I did find this article on how to get around the 40-minute limit. It's clunky, but you can do it. It requires that you leave the meeting and then you come back on. But again, if you want to meet with folks and you want to spend some extra time, it's an option. All right. You're also allowed to reserve up to 3 meetings a day. So you can, assign meetings back to back. Again, that's going to require that you have your folks logged back in. But, if your funds are limited, it's an option. Now, you can, for $149, $150 a year, join and get a license. That'll allow you, that one person, to access Zoom at a time, all right? So other people can use it, but only one person can be using Zoom at the same time. You can have unlimited group meetings and also do social media streaming, which I'll talk about. And you also get 1 gigabyte of cloud recording, so you can record to the cloud. Something else that will be discussed. All right. Now, that does not allow you to have the webinar. If you want to have a webinar, you need an additional $400 per license. All right. So that is another reason to think about whether or not you want to host a webinar, or can you do what you need to do with the meeting. okay? Depending on the size of your organization, I work with the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So again, I have access to all of this. They, you know, again, have a huge license. There's so many of us teaching all the time. All right. So what I want to do is just go through the very, very basics right away. As I said, you can create an account for free. Now, some of you, maybe all of you, have a Zoom account, but some of you may not. You just attend meetings by clicking on the link and getting access that way. I want to let you know that it's very easy to sign up for free. You just go to Zoom US sign up, enter your email address. They're going to ask you for a work address, but you do not have to, they aren't going to check. I did this myself. I used my personal email. They sent me a link to my account. You just click activate account, and then you sign into the Zoom account on the web. All right. And then once you've done that, basically you're just going to use your email address and your password to sign in. And this is basically, once you've logged in, this is what your screen is going to look like. It's very basic. You can change your profile, schedule meetings. Obviously, this webinar function is not going to be available to you. Recordings are only going to be local recordings saved to your computer, and the settings, you will be able to access those. All right. One thing I want to make really clear up front is your personal meeting ID. You need to think of this as your phone number. Do you want to give your phone number to everyone? When you're scheduling meetings, you have the option of using your personal ID or having them generate an ID for you. So that's something to think about, okay? All right, so getting started with the webinar. Zoom allows you to broadcast a meeting with up to 1,000 attendees, depending on the size of your license. I'm sorry, 10,000 attendees. We've kind of gone through this already, and I'm going to go through it in greater detail, but I did want to provide this information on the slide. Webinars can require pre-registration. It can be turned off by simply clicking on a link at the time of webinar. So again, I'm going to go through this a little bit later. Okay, again, there are two methods of approval for webinars that require registration. They can be automatically approved, or you can manually approve them. Now, this is important because oftentimes, again, some webinars are free and some require payment. So you may not want to automatically approve. You may want to manually approve individuals based on whether or not their payment has gone through. Zoom will actually link with PayPal and allow you to take payment at the time of registration. So that's something that if you use that, you may be able to automatically approve attendees. Okay, something to think about. All right, so we're going to jump right into scheduling a webinar. Here you are. You're going to click on webinars. Remember that screen from a few slides ago that I said that you would not have access to if you had a free account? Well, here you go. This is what's going to happen. Now, if it's your first webinar, you're not going to see upcoming webinars, previous webinars, or templates. You're just going to be able to schedule your webinar. Okay, it's going to start here. You're going to determine whether or not it's recurring. You're going to give it a topic, and they're going to assign you a webinar ID. Either it's yours or they're going to automatically generate one for you. And you're going to click start. You're going to notice at the bottom here, again, I've given you links to where you can go to get this information, and all of this has been getting started with webinar. Okay, so once you hit start, you're going to want to name your webinar. You may want to give it a description, depending on what it is. I have group supervision meetings with my students each week. I just say group supervision with my student's name. They know it. I don't have to enter a description. Now, you can use a template so that if you have a standard meeting, that type of meeting that you use constantly, you can select a template. And the information will populate. You will assign a time, a date and a time. And this is really important. So say I want to schedule, this is more if you were scheduling a meeting though, and not a webinar, and you're doing it at 1:30 and you want to meet with the person right away. Well, Zoom is going to automatically set it for 2 o'clock. You can go back. You can go back and set it for 1 p.m. You don't have to schedule in advance, all right? So know that that's an option, but obviously for a webinar, you're going to be scheduling quite a bit out front of that date. All right. So you may have a reoccurring webinar. You may be setting something up where you're going to be doing a series of events on different topics. And so you can select the reoccurrence, and you can actually have it daily, weekly, monthly, no fixed time, every Friday, the last Friday of a month. If you need more than 50 reoccurrences, God bless you. But then you would select the no fixed time. And then also, this is really interesting, you can list this in your public events list. So if you have a calendar on your website, you can actually link your webinar to your public event list, all right? And again, there's a link right there that will allow you to do that. And the information's also available there, getting started with webinar. Okay, so again, you'll be asked whether or not you want to require registration. And if registration is required, you can specify one of 3 options. So they can register once and attend any of the occurrences. They need to register for each occurrence to attend, or they can register once and choose 1 or more occurrences. You might think, well, why would you need those choices? Oftentimes when you are offering an event, you may say you can attend for $250, you can attend the entire conference, or you can attend 1 or 2 events for $50. And if that's the case, then this is where you would use the 1 or more occurrences to attend. All right, because they're only, again, allowed based on what they paid to attend 1 or 2 events. All right, so again, you can choose multiple options. You can allow for a passcode if you want. It's, again, an additional level of security. So what will happen is they will get the email, and they will get the meeting ID, and they will also get a passcode. Generally, if they get an email and it says click this link, they will not need to enter a passcode. It will be assumed that because they have the email that they are basically certified to enter. All right. So again, this is all the things that you're going to be doing when you are registering for your webinar. Video, do you want video enabled or not? See, in this case, video was not enabled, not for the attendees. It was enabled for me, and it was enabled for Pam as the interpreter. Okay. The host, choose if you would like the host video on or off when you join the webinar. Now, again, our host, Brooke, originally when we were talking, her video was on, but she turned it off. Panelists, again, you can choose whether or not you see me on the screen. So it can be turned on or off. And as, again, as the presenter, I'm considered a panelist. Now, again, with audio, you can choose whether to allow people to call in versus telephone, computer, telephone and audio both, or a third party. Now, this is a little confusing. It was confusing to me. Sometimes you may want to use Zoom automatically gives you dial in, gives you information, gives you a link to click. They basically are your telephone for you. But if you want to use like a conference room telephone, they give you the option to enable third party. Again, if it's enabled for your account. Okay, so again with the webinar, these are additional options that give you greater control. You can enable a Q&A. For some reason, again, our Q&A wasn't enabled for this meeting. Oh, actually it was. Chat was what was not enabled. Q&A is. You can enable a practice session. You can only allow authenticated, sometimes I struggle, people who are authorized or have a membership with Zoom. They have to be signed into their Zoom account before they can join the webinar. Again, this is just an additional level of security. And then you can make your webinar on demand. So it will automatically record the webinar into the cloud and immediately share a link with all everyone who is registered. So again, you can record the webinar automatically, but choose whether or not you want it to record locally to your computer or whether you want it on the cloud. So that's something to think about, all right? Do you want the information available right away? Okay, so scheduling for someone else. Now think about this. You may work in an office with hundreds of people and all of your work now is via webinar because of what you do. You may not want all of your executives to have to learn how to go through this process of clicking all of these buttons and adding all of this information. So you may have an administrative assistant who has scheduling privileges. Okay, so the thing is if you have that, they are going to have to be a licensed user and have the webinar license in order to schedule the event. You may also want to have an alternative host, okay? Because they are allowed to start the meeting in your absence. Say something happened and for some reason your computer isn't working. It's good to have not a co-host, but an alternative host because they are allowed to start, as I said, the meeting in your absence. You also have the option of including an interpreter, and you can enable language interpretation. We're going to go through what that looks like and how you do that in a little bit, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and schedule the webinar. So under invite attendees, you can either join the link or copy the invitation, all right? Basically, here's a link to join. All of you are here. You received an email. And so basically, what happened was either you were emailed the invitation or you were emailed the link. And in this case, I believe the invitation was copied and sent through April. Okay. Believe it or not, we're still at the getting started with webinar page. Okay. So the other thing you want to do with the webinar is add panelists. All right. So you're going to sign into the Zoom web portal. Click the topic that you want to add panelists to. So whatever the webinar is you had scheduled. Under invitations, you're going to select invite panelists. And you are going to, again, copy the invitation and send it to them. So what happens is, and this is what happened with me, I got a special link, and that was a panelist link, which gave me additional options that you don't have. And one of them is the video. I have the video, and I also have the ability to share screen. Okay. So basically what's going to happen is under panelists, you're going to invite a person to join. You're going to give their name as it's going to be shown here, and their email address. All right. Now, believe it or not, you can add up to 300 panelists. I can't imagine what type of presentation or webinar would have 300, but they allow that. You can add and delete panelists. And what's interesting again is, see this button right here, send invitation to all newly added panelists immediately. So as soon as you save it, you can send the invitation there. All right. Okay. So if you click send invitation immediately, this is what that person's going to see. They're basically going to say, you've been invited to a Zoom webinar. Now, this is one where there's going to be multiple meetings. So it's going to be, again, on the 11th of each month. So they ask you to download and import it into your calendar so that you can just click on it right away. And here is, again, the link that will allow you to join via PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android. Okay. And again, this is from inviting panelists to a webinar through the Zoom articles available on the Help Center. Okay. We've talked about these, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but I wanted to share the screen with you or for you. So again, the host of the webinar is the user who the webinar is scheduled under. They have full permission to do everything. There are co-hosts, and they can manage administrative functions like stopping and starting recordings, but they cannot start the webinar. All right. This is where I talked about needing an alternative host. Panelists, again, are full participants, and then attendees, which are, again, you can attend, you can see, and you can participate through Q&A and chat if it's enabled. All right, so now you've got it, you've got your folks invited. Now's the big day. All right, now you want to start your webinar. You can go to webinar, find it, and click start. There's also an option in Zoom Client, which is basically a fancy word for saying everywhere but the web portal. All right. So you sign into the web portal and click webinar. It's going to be on that left side screen that I showed you earlier that has all your settings, meetings, webinars, etc. Okay, so that's if you want to, you're at your PC, you're at the web portal using Zoom. This is what you're going to see if you are on your phone or anywhere else but your web portal. All right. You're just going to click and say start. And again, this is for joining a webinar by an invitation link. So here you are, and this is probably what most of you used. But it's important to kind of go through the options that are there. So you can generally join it through the link, which is the easiest way to do it. Sometimes these don't always work. So the other option is to use, go ahead and log into Zoom if you have a membership and enter the meeting ID. And actually I lied there. You do not have to, you can go to Zoom and you can just say join a meeting. You don't have to have a membership. They'll just give you the option of typing in the membership ID. They also allow you, sometimes you'll get an email and it'll have all these different phone numbers. You can actually use your phone and you can call, and I actually did this right before the meeting, and sure enough, when you do, it will say, it'll ask you to enter the meeting ID, and you just type it in over your phone and it will connect you that way. All right, that would be for audio, though you're not going to have the full Zoom functions. You're only going to have audio access to the meeting if you do that. Okay, if you choose either the iPhone one tap or telephone. And notice how it says that oftentimes when you get that meeting invite, they have local numbers that like are cities closest to you, or the national number or an international. They recommend that you use a number that's closer to your location for better quality. All right. So we talked a little bit about this. So again, you call, you use that 1-800 number to call. They're going to ask you to enter that 9-digit webinar meeting and click join on your phone, tap join, or if prompted, enter that 9-digit code. Now, they may ask you for your name and email address to join the webinar as well. And this is what you're often going to see. You may have seen this today. Please wait for the host to start the webinar. At this point, you can test your speakers at all. Sometimes it'll say, test my audio. And that'll give you audio options like changing your speakers if you want to. Okay, phew. I feel like I'm going through this so quickly, but there is I love the phew. That's great, Pam. I'm sure you feel that too. Whew. Okay, so webinar options and tools. This is where we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what you can use. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to see, you may see chat, raise hand, Q&A, and audio settings. So Q&A is going to allow you to ask a question. And these are the two options. You can either be anonymous or you can allow attendees to view who asked the question. So here's an anonymous attendee. How can I schedule a meeting? And you just type the answer in. And here is Lisa who says, where can I download Zoom? And you type the answer there as well. You go to Zoom/US and there you go. All right. Now, for audio settings, you can, like I said, you can change your audio settings. On the space bar, there was a caret there, an upward arrow. Again, you can use that to change your speakers. If you are asked to, or you raise your hand and say you'd like to be unmuted, you will see a notice that says a host would like to unmute your microphone. All right. So you can either say, no, I want to stay muted, or you can unmute yourself. Now, in meeting chats, all right. Now, basically, to chat, we won't be doing that today, but if you were, you would, if you're a video only or viewing a shared screen, you're going to want to go to the top of your screen to get access to your meetings. Now, and then it will give you this chat screen. So note that you can either chat to everyone, or you can pull this down and you can chat to an individual, and you want to type your message here. Now, when new chat messages are sent to you or everyone, a preview of the message will appear, and the host title bar at the bottom, the chat will flash orange to kind of let them know, hey, there's a chat coming in. All right. Now to raise your hands, here we are. So that was chat. Here, if you want to raise your hand, basically you just click on the icon, and then when you want to lower it, you just click on it again and your hand will go away. But what will happen is on the top left corner of the screen, like in my picture, you'll see a hand. And we may not be able to get to it today, but what's really cool in settings is you can change the skin tone of your hand to match the skin tone that you represent. All right. So we're jumping to closed captioning. Now, closed caption was available, and it can either be typed, it can be automatically created by Zoom, or as I said, it can be typed by the host, co-host, or a third party. You can integrate. Yes?
Wanted to give you a 15-minute warning.
Thank you. Yes, I've been clicking on my phone too, just to keep track of my time. Thank you, Brooke. You can integrate a third party. And so basically when you are scheduling your meeting, it will ask you under closed captioning, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to give them the URL of the third party. Okay. It's called REST API. I had to look it up because I had absolutely no idea what that meant, but that's what it means. So oftentimes you may want to use a professional third party to do your transcription. It again may depend on what your budget's like and how official the meeting is. Think about this. This is going up into the Zoom cloud. It may go up into the Zoom cloud. So that may be something that is important to you. All right. Okay. Want to talk briefly about polling. Again, polling allows you to ask people about how the webinar is and what the information is. So you can either create a single choice or multi-polling. So I chose to leave polling to the end, but you can create multiple polls throughout. We're running out of time. I'm just gonna let you know that the information is here on how you would create a poll. So you'd go to webinars and the information would be here. You select polls, and it's going to drop down a box. You're gonna put your question in. You're gonna choose whether or not the respondents are anonymous, and you're gonna ask the question and give them multiple options. All right. You can add multiple questions. I believe 10 per poll. All right. And then once you're in your webinar and you're ready to launch it, the host or the webinar person will have the option of hitting that icon to launch the poll. Okay. And interpreters. This is where we assign Pam to the meeting, and here you will see they as you're scrolling down in your webinar or your meeting choices, at the very bottom is to enable language interpretation, and basically you're going to give them their email and whether or not they're going to be translating, what is the language that they're going to be translating. I'm sorry, this isn't Pam, that's ASL. That's a really important distinction. For Pam, she's going to be a panelist. This is for if you want to interpret from English to another language, or from Spanish to English, etc. I'm in the Rio Grande Valley, and believe it or not, the majority of the folks are Spanish speaking. Either they're bilingual or Spanish only. So for us, it may make more sense to actually have the presentation in Spanish and have the interpretation in English. So what's going to happen is when the meeting starts, if you're using a language interpreter, they're going to ask you to choose whether or not you want to hear the meeting in English or you want to have it presented to you in Spanish. Okay? Now, the cloud recording is going to be in the primary language. If you are unable to and allowed to, you can record the meeting, and it's going to record in the language that you chose. All right? So here we go with recording. Local recording, just so you know, is available to anyone. It's free. But if you don't have a pro plan, you can only upload it to your computer. It's going to be a really large file, so you're going to have to transfer it to some other file storage service like Dropbox, Google Drive, or some other streaming service like YouTube. All right, so there are ways of getting access. All right, so basically to start a local recording, you just hit record. The host is going to see that. You're going to see that in the upper left-hand corner so that you know that the meeting is recording. Once the meeting is done, you are going to see that it is being converted. And this can take a couple of minutes. Now, you can also click on participants and see who is recording. If there is a red dot there, that is a sign that they are recording. All right. Now, screen sharing. I'm currently screen sharing my PowerPoint. Basically, what will happen is when you click on screen sharing, everything that is on your PC is going to show up, give you the option. We also have a whiteboard, the iPhone, iPad, via AirPlay, and also your internet, whatever you have, using if you're using Mozilla or whatever. All of that's going to be available to you. I have all of this information presented, described later in the PowerPoint. We don't have time to go through all of it right now, but know that that's available to you. All right. So depending on how savvy you are, you may want to use a whiteboard, pull a whiteboard in and link it to your Zoom meeting. All right. You may also have breakout rooms where you may want people to, we've got 50 folks. We may want to break out into 10 rooms and have, or 5 rooms and have 10 people each discuss a specific topic. Say you're presenting on the needs of people with individuals with disabilities, and you may want 10 people to talk about transportation, 10 to talk about education, etc. What's important about breakout rooms is that people can either self-populate or you can assign them, all right? So they can be assigned by their expertise. They may decide ahead of time, or you can let them choose, okay? So breakout rooms basically have full audio, video, and screen share capabilities. The issue with breakout rooms is they cost money, all right? You have to have an additional license for breakout rooms, and they are expensive. I believe they're like $400 per breakout room. So that's something to think about. Now, again, I'm out of time, but I want to let you know that I've given you a lot of other features and settings that you can use. So I've basically shown, this is where we talked about skin type, your skin tone, and this is settings. So I've given you a ton of information that you can use on how to change settings, how to change your name, etc. throughout this presentation. So know that this information is available to you. There just was not enough time in the day to include all of it. So I've also included how to join a meeting for novices. At this point, I'd like to implement the poll. If I can, Brooke, do you have that available?
It should be up. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, great. So, yeah, again, I'm asking you what percentage of the information was new to you? And then we're just going to wait for it to slow down. And then Brooke, you're the expert at this, so you'll know when to go on to the next question.
Actually, Brittany, that's the expert. But the first question was, what percentage of the information presented was new to you? And your choices were 100%, 75%, 50%, or 25%, or 0. So about 18% said 25, 39% said 50%, 32% said 75%, and 11% said 100%. So.
Okay, all right. And we have question number 2.
Question number 2 is, would you like to learn more about this topic? And is a yes or no.
And fortunately, as I've said, I've created about 30 additional slides that provide you additional information.
And all of those are actually available on the April conference website under this session's presentation material. So you can go and access the whole PowerPoint presentation that Barbara used.
Okay, and I believe we have one more question.
So the results in that were 89% would like more, to learn more. The next question is, please check all that apply. The information presented will be helpful in my professional career. The information presented will be helpful in my personal life. Zoom is a great resource to communicate in the workplace, and Zoom is a great resource to communicate / stay in touch with friends and family. Oh, some are saying that they were only allowed to pick one answer, so.
Oh, darn it. See, that's a flaw in my setting. Okay, well, this answer is flawed. And that's the thing I want to tell you about, is that you're always going to learn something. That was one of the points I wanted to make. No matter how hard you try, you're never going to get everything right the first time or the second time. There's always things that you can learn. And Zoom is so complex that there's a lot of information. We are almost out of time. I think we're out of time. I don't know if we have time for the Q&A.
So we are fortunate that our host on the backside is a Zoom professional and has actually answered questions as you've gone. So the only one that's actually still waiting, well, there's a couple, is what is a Zoom cloud meeting? And I am to organize a webinar for youth with some games and activities which resources do you recommend for these activities? Hopefully they can find some of those answers in your PowerPoint, as we are all out of time. And if you missed certain points, this is also being recorded and will be available to rewatch or re-listen to, usually within 24 hours.
And can I just give them my email address very quickly?
Sure.
Barbara Schoen, it's barbara.schoen@utrgv.edu. It's University of Texas Rio Grande Valley.edu. All right, so feel free to email me. And I've done this for almost 20 years, and I left my email address off the presentation. Like I said, you're always going to make mistakes, but thank you so much for attending. And I hope you found this information and the other information that's contained in this presentation helpful.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And again, there will be a survey that you will automatically be directed to, or you can also find that through the website.
All right. Thank you so much.